So we are somewhere in the northwest Nelson area of New Zealand on the west coast, and today we're going to go caving. We're going to go down this cave here, and this is Alex.
Yeah.
And Jonathan is making a GPS measurement.
Just looking at where we are.
Yep, that's good, so we need to know where we are. So these guys have been down this cave many times. I've never been down here, so they're leading the way, and we're going to explore to see what there is there. This whole area that we're in is limestone, and it's quite an extensive part of New Zealand. So the limestone here was laid down in the Oligocene, which is a time when New Zealand, as we know it today, did not exist. It was kind of underwater. Most of New Zealand was underwater level in the ocean. So since that time, the New Zealand that we see has been pushed up by earthquakes along the plate boundary. We're going back into an area of rocks that were laid down underwater and perhaps 50 or 100 meters of water depth. Today we're more or less going to go down into the limestone, and Jonathan here might be able to tell me some of the history of this cave, which will be great.
This is quite a complex cave. It's not particularly large, but it's got various levels to it. Well, this is the oldest passage in the cave. And if I turn a spotlight on, you can see that we're basically in a round kind of old passage, and there's no water here at all. All the water is now thousands and thousands of years ago, has trickled down into lower passages. And what's left is a passage that has rockfall on the ground. So this is stuff that's fallen off the roof over thousands of years, and all the rainwater that seeps down through the rock has formed all these straws. So on all these straws, some of them turned into stalactites, and underneath them the stalagmites are growing. So we've got an incredibly peaceful environment here with no wind currents, no weather, and all of these things can grow. Now, actually a lot of these have stopped growing now. There's not enough water percolating through to make these things grow anymore. So we have to be very careful not to touch them. This is all just from rainwater that's dissolved the rock, and as it comes out into the cave, the rock eventually crystallises out in white crystals.
Okay. Jonathan. Good. On the way. And here, cave's a bit wider again, which is good.
So what we're looking at here is a young stalactite. And so you've got a little straw, and the straw is hollow in the middle, and the water percolates down the middle. And as you see the drop on the end there, the calcite is depositing right at the edges and extending the length of the straw, making it longer.
Yeah. Okay, tell me about this area.
So here we've got the stalls in the background, and they're quite nice and new. There's a bit of staining from some iron or something in the rocks above. And then we've got these things called helictites. And helictites they don't grow up and down, they just go any which way. They're kind of random all over the place. And sometimes they're thick, sometimes they're thin, and sometimes they're really curly. These are quite straight. And then here we've got a stalactite coming down to stalagmite that used to be joined, but the whole bottom bit here must have sunk. And that might not be an earthquake, that might just be because it was sitting on clay that's eroded away and the whole thing's moved. And so there's now a break between the thing going. This used to be one thing here, and it's now broken.
Look at that little candelabra. That's about 80 centimetres high. And these are the straws that are so delicate.
Nice.
Yeah. Here's some very early stage stalagmites. So this is called the Inca column?
Yeah.
The water has obviously formed a whole lot of stalactites, and then stalactites on stalactites. and then it's formed little waterfalls going down in a crisscross pattern down the outside.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so these are all broken stalactites that have come off the roof during an earthquake. The inside of the stalactite will be the oldest, and as it grew, the outside is the youngest part.
So there are lots of caves in northwest Nelson, and because they're close to all the major faults around here, there's a lot of damage. There's a lot of rockfall, and sometimes you see fresh rockfall. After the Kaikoura quake, there's been several examples in northwest Nelson where there's been significant rockfall. The rocks are splintered. You can see all the fresh marks where the rocks have fractured. I guess if you were here, actually when the earthquake happened, there'd be a very sulphurous smell from all the cracking rocks. It'd be quite an experience, really. We often see stalactites that have been cracked and maybe offset a little bit, or formations that are broken and are lying on the floor. So this is all evidence of shaking that's happened. Big earthquakes will have an effect on formations in the cave. It'll shake the whole ground, and if there's anything that's at all weak, then stuff like this will fall off, and that's when it suddenly stops growing, and we can then date the calcite and work out when it fell over, when the earthquake was. And what we're looking at here is a large piece of stalactite. Almost certainly that fell off in an earthquake because it would have been well attached. Calcite's like concrete, it's really strong. And as scientists, one of the things we're interested in at the moment a lot in New Zealand is finding out when earthquakes happened. We could, for example, try dating the stalactites right at the tip, and we could see when the most recent date on that, of the calcite there, would give us a date of when it was last growing, and that would tell us when the earthquake was. And potentially we could find similar things throughout the region and get a whole cluster of dates, and we could work out when all the big earthquakes on the Alpine Fault happened. So the shaking from an earthquake is not intense underground. It usually comes across more as a big roar and a boom rather than the kind of shaking that we're used to on the surface.
I have learnt a lot of things from Jonathan and Alex. One is that you have to be really, really careful not to damage these delicate formations that have taken thousands of years to be created. And apart from that, is a couple of things that I love about this experience. It's adventurous, it's exciting, it's really hard work. So, here we are again. So this has been a great experience, such a wonderful mixture of adventure and discovery.
Really good trip. Thanks, Julie. Yeah.